Hello and welcome to the Nitty Gritty Writing Podcast. I'm Simon Cantan.
And I'm Dave Higgins.
And this week we're going to be talking about both serializing a story and sharing rough cuts in public, because we figured they were kind of semi-related. But before we do that, we're going to start with our rundown of what we did for the last 2 weeks. So Dave, you want to go first?
Yes. As usual, but as is particularly relevant to this week's topic, over the last fortnight, I've outlined, written, redrafted, polished, and published 2 episodes of my weekly serial. I've also redrafted most of Adventure, the book that Simon and I are writing, comic fantasy, although redrafted sounds a little bit more drastic than potentially it should. So there's the story's there, it's great, the comedy's already there, so it's more of a sort of hard polish than a total rewrite. I'd say at least 1 in every 10 of Simon's words are still in there.
Well, that's good. At least it had some impact.
It's in all seriousness, this is the second time I've read it through since you wrote it, and the jokes are still funny and it still hangs together well. So it's not a horrible butcher job. So
Cool.
Hopefully I've put some little tweaks in there that hold it together and haven't added any horrible errors that I haven't noticed. Apart from that, got rough concepts for the cover for my pseudonymous project. So just down to a final few tweaks, and then I can slap that on and be good to go. So fingers crossed, I'll have the final images next week and I can go from there.
Cool. On my end, I've written somewhere between 13,000 and 14,000 words of personal gods, which I'm now considering changing the title of, because I was reading a post by Joanna Penn about her book Exodus, which is like a thriller book. And she said she got a lot of 1-star reviews from people saying this is nothing to do with Jesus or the Bible because of the book of Exodus. Which mine is called Personal Gods, so if Exodus gets those kind of reviews, I mean, I can't imagine Personal Gods is going to be this has nothing to do with Jesus. Anyway, so I'm wondering, I came up with the series title, which is Gods of Blood and Shadow, which kind of, I think, suggests vampires and supernatural stuff. But I need to come up with a new book title, I think. I think Personal Gods won't kind of cut it. Like, I want something that suggests that there is vampires and supernatural stuff in it. And I wouldn't mind mentioning Loki, who is the god in question, somewhere in the title. But anyway, I have to have a think about that. So yeah, so I'm about halfway through. That's about just under 30,000 words written on that one, of the first draft. That was this week. The previous week, I spent the whole week programming on my super secret programming project thing, which I got a substantial amount done. So it was all the boring stuff that is never any fun to program, like a login system and a way to register a new user and all that kind of stuff that is not thrilling at all, because I already had a single user system. Basically, I could log in and use the system, and I've thrown everything I want into my system. So it tracks how many words I write, how long I write for, it tracks my sales, all that kind of stuff. I just, as a programmer, I can just throw all this stuff into a single system. And that's fine, because if it falls over or something, it's just me. But when I want more people to come into the system, particularly readers, it needs to be really simple. It can't be complicated. It can't fall over. It can't have bugs. It can't, all the usual stuff. So I'm looking to get readers into my system to do super secret stuff, which I will reveal on a later podcast once I've got it sorted out. Because I'm considering if it works as making it a subscription service for writers. We'll see if it works. If it doesn't do anything, if it's not useful, then I'm not going to release it. And the final thing was I did a book cover for Personal Gods, which then my wife Heidi had to go at fixing up. She noticed some flaws and stuff. But in looking at it, I'm like, well, I'm putting all this work into this book. I'm trying to make it as best I possibly can. And then I'm slapping together a cover, and I'm not a graphic designer or even a book cover designer or whatever that would best serve it long term to get a proper cover. But money is very, very tight at the moment, because I have 3 books in the Dragons and Magic series, the adventure series. I have potentially 2 books in this Personal Gods series, or Gods of Shadow and Blood and Shadow. I have 2 post-apocalyptic books I need to write for the other bundle that I'm going to be in. So that's 7 books, and then I have Killer President, which already has a cover. So 7 books that might need covers at $300 to $400 a pop. That's quite a lot of money. So, so I was asking in my day job about overtime and stuff. Maybe I'll just have to work some overtime. Try not to let it impact my writing time, and just slave for a few months in order that I have proper covers. Because as we mentioned in the previous podcasts, it's the number one thing, really. Anyway, that was my week. So hopefully the next few weeks I should get Personal Gods finished, so I can polish that up and have it ready for the bundle. So we can crack on with our topic. I'm guessing you need to take the lead on the serializing, Dave, because I don't have anything I've serialized. Other than, you could say Green Star, but it wasn't published serialized. It's in seasons.
Yeah. That's Green Star is partway through. And a lot of what we did for Green Star works well for serials. So I think the first thing to do is I see a difference between writing a serial and serializing a story. While serials can do, and depending on who you listen to, should have an arc for the whole thing, they are chunks that are created to be chunks. So are a different thing than taking a book and serializing it. So I think sort of a lot of people, when they talk about serializing, talk about serializing their novel. And you hear a lot about how before he was picked up by big publishing, Andy Weir serialized The Martian on his blog. And well, he put chunks of The Martian up on his blog, but they're not necessarily written as a serial. And it's here's the next bit. So for me, the serial, whilst it fits somewhere, whilst it does fit into a longer arc, it starts off with a changing situation, moves through and comes to another significant point at the end. So however long it is, each episode starts with resolving whatever happened at the end of the previous one. And then there is a miniature, here are a bunch of problems, some of which move the bigger plot forward, some of which are other things, but most of it is tidied up again by the end of the episode, leaving another cliffhanger at the end. So rather than the standard way of writing a story where you start off with an inciting incident, go all the way through, and then you try to end it with everything sorted out so the reader doesn't go, oh, that was a swizz, because it doesn't tie up the loose ends. If you're writing a serial deliberately to be a serial, you're almost going at it from the other side. Apart from the first episode, each episode starts off by tying up all of the loose ends from the previous one, and then carrying on, and then you deliberately leave a cliffhanger at the end because you're trying to get people to go, oh, what will happen next? Tune in on Saturday for the next thrilling episode. Which means also that writing a serial rather than serializing an existing book are aimed at different audiences. They might both be, say, fantasy, but the audience of people who like that, reading a short bit of fiction once a week, coming to the end of it and having that whole week thinking, well, how are they going to get out of this situation? What's going to happen next? Is different from people who want to read a chunk of story once a week, but really hate sitting there thinking, well, where's the cliffhanger? So
I think if you're writing a true serial as well, you have to be smarter than, you have to really put a lot of work into how you resolve the cliffhangers as well. Because you've got the famous example of Lost, where they didn't resolve the cliffhangers very well at all. I haven't watched the last season of Lost, so this is just hearsay. But then you also have the case that if you're releasing it week by week, what you really want, if you've got a wide enough audience, is that people are discussing it and going, oh, well, maybe they could do this. Like, have you been watching Game of Thrones, or have you read Game of Thrones, Dave?
I've seen the first series.
Oh, okay, well, I won't spoil anything then. There is a cliffhanger at the end of this season just gone, where people have been discussing it for the last 8 months about what the possible solution is to the cliffhanger that they left at the end of the last season. And people have come up with hundreds of different theories, which means that the series creator have to come up with something that's at least as smart as those theories, if not smarter, which is a very tricky thing.
Yeah, it is different. Coming up with something that makes the audience go, I guess, of course, that's a brilliant solution, without being something they've thought of, is tricky. And also, a true serial gets you the opposite effect of the same thing, that you can't bring anything suddenly out of left field. Because if you're releasing something once a week, if you get 20 episodes in and suddenly you want your character, okay, well, the natural way to overcome this twist would be for them to do this. But if you've already established their character over those 20 episodes, and because they're published, you can't go back and change them, there are 20 episodes worth of character things that define what a character can do, what a character can't do, and also define the questions that have already been asked. So if your character is if you decide, well, to get out of this, we'll have the character climb down this sheer cliff face, then you're not just stuck with, well, the character isn't very athletic, so it's not realistic. You're also stuck with all of the other cliffhangers you've resolved where they could have used their climbing skills, but didn't mention them. So it's
like,
you
could write a character into a, like, my wife and I were watching the first episodes of Buffy again, and in those, the character of Xander gets written into a corner because he is not good at intellectual stuff and he's not good at physical stuff. He's just comic relief. Yeah. Which means when he gets in danger, someone else has to rescue him. He can't. He's got no skills that he can use to get out of that. Whereas the character of Willow has the brains, and Buffy obviously has the brawn.
Yeah.
So when they get in trouble, they can either think their way out of it or fight their way out of it. Xander is just like, well, I guess I'll wait for someone to come rescue me.
Yeah. So they did come up with ways around it, but there are some times when it's a bit strained, and Xander is a little bit of a sort of princess in the tower character.
Yeah.
He's there, he's pretty, he looks good, but he doesn't actually have any agency there to be rescued or to make comic one-liners to lighten up scenes or move the plot along. So,
to their credit, at least they flipped the genders on their head. But you're right; she is just a princess in another gender.
He is, but yes, but that's where it goes potentially wrong. So you've got to avoid that, having characters who are there but aren't good at anything. But the converse of that also, you can't leave yourself open too much. You can't have characters who are good at lots of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very fine balance.
Yeah. So
sorry, go ahead.
So I've been, the problem I've been having with this is the coming up with things. So my solution was to start with characters who have lots of differences, but are both competent at what they are. So I've got the wiser old character, but instead of him being just a wise figure, he's also, his profession is reviled by a large chunk of society. So revealing his competence causes him issues. So if he really needs to get out of a situation, he can do it, but it's probably going to cause another situation to resolve. And the other character is, they're very competent, but they're a young they start off as a young peasant. So they can be smart, but they don't have any education or any life experience. So they can develop skills later on that haven't been used before because they realize things are possible. So they can learn how to talk. And because the reader's following along, watching them putting the wider world together, it means that obviously sort of they'll know if they can climb or not. But if it comes to like fighting with a sword, because peasants don't have access to high quality military grade weaponry, if they turn out to be quite good in a fight, it's not suddenly, you just pulled that out of your hat to fix a problem. because they genuinely had a reason not to know. So I think if you are writing one episode at a time, you need to find ways to have your characters not reveal their competencies openly, or to have severe consequences that mean they're not going to use them casually. So magic that leaves you a quivering wreck for half an hour, you're not going to use that unless you absolutely have to. And if it's also not socially acceptable, you're not going to mention that you can do it unless you come to a situation where you can't think of anything else. With ignorance, but the converse.
Yeah, sorry. I was going to say the inverse of the converse of that is that. Go ahead.
You're not abandoning completely the way to write a book, because I don't know what's going to happen in 3 episodes time necessarily, but I know what the next 5 big problems are going to be. I know what the overall arc of the serial is going to be. So the other way to protect yourself against having to pull things out of left field is to put things in to your outlines. Like, well, if I know 80% of the way through I'm going to be doing a scene in the mountains, then decide right from the start when you're creating your characters, okay, one of them will be reasonably good at climbing, or I'll deliberately make a point of none of the characters being good at climbing, and I'll note that that's my choice, and then I'll decide, well, what reasons, if none of them are good at climbing at the moment, would they have for learning to climb if they're not forced to? And so you can put these things in, and if you put in a story arc where someone isn't good at climbing and they get stuck up a tree and they fight to overcome their fear of climbing and become good at it, then that's an arc in itself. That's a character development arc. That will sit there, that will be enough. And then if you get to the 80% point and you've got the thing in the mountains, and during your detailed planning of that chunk of the story, you discover, well, they need to climb down somewhere. You've already set up that one of the characters has been practicing climbing. So they're going to be a bit nervous doing it on a mountain as opposed to a safer situation. But you've told the readers they can do it. But if you get to that scene and you get to that chunk, you don't need them to climb down because the story's gone somewhere else. You've got a different set of cliffhangers to accidentally make a play on words. Then you've tied up the learning to climb arc as a character development arc already. So you don't then leave the readers thinking, well, he set this up and then nothing happens with it because you've paid it off. So
I mean, so that's another, like you've kind of touched on, another important point is that there needs to be character development in a serial story as well. You cannot have them facing the same situation with the same problems every time. So for example, I was thinking in real life, my wife's scared of spiders. So if there's a spider in the house, she'll get freaked out, and then if I'm home, she'll ask me to deal with it. But if I'm not home, she will then eventually work up the courage to go get the spider under glass and maybe throw it out, or else she just smosh it. But it's going to be the same reaction every single time because she's not a character in the story.
Yeah.
Whereas in a book, if someone did the same thing and reacted in the same way and didn't get over their fear of spiders, it would be an irritating book. So books are a little unrealistic in that way. So they have to learn as they're going. So the reason I stopped watching The Walking Dead, the TV show, was because the characters did not learn. So 4 seasons in, they were still making fundamental mistakes about being around zombies. You know, turning your back on them and assuming everything's fine or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you're going, well, this is 4 seasons in. They've been around zombies for 2 years. Like, they should have learned by now how to deal with zombies.
And in real life, if you've got zombies, if you've survived for 2 years, you'll have picked up the survival skills. You'll have put the work into it. Because probably I'd die if zombies burst into my house now. But if zombies had been roaming the streets outside my house for 2 years and they burst in, I've spent those 2 years learning to deal with zombies.
Yeah, I mean, and then as well, your door would be barricaded and you'd have taken precautions and you would have a shotgun nearby or something in case they get in and all that kind of stuff.
You'd learn all these things. So, but yes, I think it's stories as opposed to real life. There has to be development within the story time. So if the story takes place over 10 years, you can have realistic speed. People don't really apply themselves. They kind of learn. And if you do something now and then for 10 years, you get better at it. So from the start of the book to the end, there's character development. If your story is set over a week, you've got the same rule that there has to be character development from the start to the end. So you suddenly can't have people just bimbling around and not applying themselves. They have to actually do things. So the shorter the period of time your story is set over, the less flexibility you have to go, well, it's realistic that nothing much would change.
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole montage sequences in movies or TV shows.
Yeah.
Like, there's only 3 days until the big fight. Oh, well, then we'll have a montage and suddenly get better at fighting.
It's got to be a montage. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm running into that issue myself in my vampire book, that one of the main characters, 2 main characters, one needs to learn to be a vampire hunter or fighter or whatever, and there's only 2 weeks to do it. Well, that's not a realistic amount of time for any real person to learn to fight a vampire that's much stronger than you. But she has to in some way in 2 weeks. Otherwise, if she just flails around at the finale, then people are going to go, well, that was a terrible book.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, going on to the second part of our topic.
Yeah.
So Colin Mobley sent in a question by email and said, I'm revealing pieces of my book as I write on my website. Insight, inspiration, frustration, successes, that sort of thing. What are your thoughts on that? So for me, I think it's okay to say, I wrote 3 pages today. I didn't like them very much. Whatever you want, whatever your thoughts are, that's fine. I think revealing any of your first draft to anyone before you've polished it is a disastrous idea. So, because people are going to say, this is crap. This makes no sense. You need to rewrite it or something.
It's not necessarily just that. It's a mindset thing. I'm having worked in law for decades, more confident than average with uncomfortable topics, potentially. As you argue personal injury cases for a while, and you don't get grossed out about talking about horrific things in public as much as people do. So you lose that, but you don't want the mindset of someone who is going to be reading this if you want to get the story down. You can sort of, the easiest way to get over writer's block or discomfort or inner critic or whatever you want to call it, the thing that stops you just bashing the words straight out of your brain onto the page and moving on to the next sentence and not caring whether it's any good or not, is any intimation that it's going to be judged. So as soon as you take the stance that someone else could be looking at this, the part of your brain that's evolved to do what's the worst that can happen because there might be a tiger in that bush will latch on to, your mother is going to see this sex scene and she won't like it because you've written it poorly. It's bad sex. And so the moment you say, I might be putting this up somewhere to yourself, part of your brain starts telling you that if you post this, no one will ever speak to you again. And then even if you have the confidence to push it down and go, don't care, probably not true. Anyway, I don't want to be friends with people who are going to judge me on 1,000 words I've stuck up on Google Plus as a double plus rough draft or whatever. You're still putting effort into fighting against that sense it's got to be good rather than writing it.
Yeah, and the whole point of a first draft is to get it finished, not to get it good. So any sense that you like, that's going to make you want to double check that you haven't misspelled words or messed up a sentence or messed up a character or whatever. And as well, like, I'm getting to the point now halfway through a book where I'm going, oh, I should seed back some ideas at the start of the book that will then pay off now. Like, I didn't know what certain characters were going to be thinking or feeling by the midway to the book. So I've gotten to the point now where I'm going, okay, well, maybe if I switch this character so they were being deceptive the whole way through, that might make it more interesting.
Yeah.
But I didn't know they were being deceptive at the start. So then there's nothing for the reader to kind of go, oh, that was a clue that they were lying. So you absolutely don't want to share. Now, the one exception I have is the writing on air thing that I've done a few times. I haven't done it recently, but I used to. I have done where I've written with a Google Hangout up, just sharing my screen. And practically no one has watched those. People have watched 5 minutes here and there and gone, what the hell is this? It's just my screen shared as I write. So you can just watch the words come up in a word processing document. Now, the reason I've done that is because it keeps you honest. So when I've wanted to write a book in a week, if I do the writing on air, then I can't check Facebook or play a computer game or something, because even though there is 0 people watching, there is a potential audience there going, hey, you're not writing right now. So that helps to keep you writing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, sorry, go ahead.
That's the same thing, and you've taken that bit of your brain that says, if anything is slightly imperfect, people will be watching and they will hate you for your evil, and used it to fight the bit of your brain that goes, but you could write 1,000 words after you've made a sandwich.
Yeah. And as well, the point of the writing on air sessions is how many words I wrote and how long I took, like how long I stuck at the keyboard and how many words I managed to write, not how good the words are. So at the start of every session, I'd say, well, this is a first draft. The words are all going to be rubbish. It's fine. It's about sitting here and writing. So it's in a form that no one would ever want to read. I mean, if you were reading that on a video, 2-hour video, you'd be crazy. Even after the author has said this is going to be crap anyway, if you just sit there for 2 hours reading of, words coming up on the screen. So that's not the point. Whereas if someone watches one of those videos, what they'll probably do is skip ahead like an hour and go, oh, look, he's got up to 3,000 words now or something. And that's the point of the writing on air. So if you wanted some kind of public accountability, you could say, I wrote for 2 hours today and I wrote 1,000 words or 2,000 words or something. You don't have to actually put the words up themselves because they're not going to be good. They're going to be first draft words. And I don't think there's a writer in the world who can write a good first draft that's so good that someone would read it and go, that's amazing.
John Scalzi adds about 1,000 to 2,000 words a day to his manuscripts, apparently, in high quality. But I think he isn't bashing out 2,000 words and then going, well, that's me done for the day and wandering off. He's writing, say, 1,700 words and then going over them and redrafting them up into about 2,000, or he's writing 3,000 words and then chopping a third of them out over redrafts. So he's doing a couple of cycles on it. He just does it. His process is to do it on one day rather than do everything and then go over everything.
Yeah. Which, I don't know. I mean, I'm learning more and more. Every writer is different. That to me sounds like torture, but if it works for him, then it works for him. I mean, I've read loads of Scalzi books and they're all brilliant. So, yeah, I guess it works for him. So, yeah, I mean, that's another thing is that editing for me is approximately 50% of the process, like 50% of the time, kind of.
Yeah.
So if he's potentially, if he just wrote for the day and he writes 2,000, he'd write 4,000 words, and then he'd just have a lot of editing to do when he got it all done.
Yeah.
But that's, I don't know, I would say almost unique in terms of writers. I haven't heard of many, don't think I've heard of any other writers who would edit to final draft level as they go.
I don't think it's too final. I don't think it's too final draft. I think it's too sort of unreadable. It's still going through a full edit of the entire book and then an external edit of the entire book and then revisions. He's just, instead of writing the entire draft as a first draft and then coming back and writing it, he's writing tighter chunks. So he's essentially putting the first set of redrafts onto the day instead of doing them all as a separate thing.
Yeah.
Or I'm misinterpreting his explanation of his process.
Yeah, I mean, if so, not to knock him, but if it was just 1,500 to 2,000 words of first draft every day, that would be quite low for a full-time writer.
Yeah, so that's the thing. I'm thinking what the 2,000 words he produces over the course of the day to produce at the rate he does, at the quality he does, are clearly more than 2,000 words of just bashed out onto the page to get it down and you'll fix it later. Yeah, so his process is different, but yes. So, but going back to Colin's question, you could, I suppose, do a very brief polish over the top of your thing. So you write 1,000 words and then go through and fix the things that will really niggle at you, like the spelling mistakes, the comma that comes after the space instead of the space after the comma, that kind of typographical stuff. Because if you're putting in after I have written this, I will go over it and then I will publish it, it gets over the I'm going to put this in front of someone as is, even if it's only a brief polish. So
I mean,
if you wanted to, but it's a what benefit it's getting you as well. That if you're sharing things, either you're crowdsourcing your editing. So you want to do what Andy Weir did, put it out there, have people who are very good at xeno hydroponics go, the amount of water you're producing from this still, given the details of the still you've given us, is wrong. So he goes back and fixes that. So he gets lots of people catching his errors, lots of people doing that. He fixes everything, he changes it, he makes it better. Or what you're doing is looking to catch people's attention, get them to think, oh, actually, I'd quite like to read that. And if your goal is to catch your mistakes by crowdsourcing your story editing, your fact checking and so on, publishing it rough works, because the sooner you publish it, the less time you spend building on something that you're changing. But if you want to catch people's attention, you don't want to be putting your first draft out there anyway. You want to be putting something where you've put some work into it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. As you say, you would have to know very clearly what the benefit was to publishing it. Like Andy Weir, as you say, had a very clear benefit, which was that he was publishing to expert scientists in their fields who were then saying, actually, this is an exothermic reaction and therefore will explode the hab or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's not the case in most books, unless you're writing something very technical. Most of the time, if it's vampires jumping around the place fighting vampire hunters, no one's going to say, well, I'm an expert on vampires, and actually they don't work like that.
It's true. We keep our existence very secret.
Anita in the comments said hi, so hi, Anita.
Yeah. Hello. Apparently something I said was great. Google has probably not given me a timestamp that says when I was great.
I was just all great in general.
I'll go for that.
Yeah, so that kind of brings us to a tidy close, I think. Was there anything you wanted to add at the end there, Dave?
I don't think so. I think the key takeaway for this, both for what you should share and what sort of serialization you should do, is knowing what your benefits are. Writing a serial, so it's one closed chunk every week, is for a different audience. It's very much at getting people to follow along, have conversations, and from a more writer training perspective, it's trained me to be very tight and disciplined, because if you've got to episode 50 and you've got 1,000 people following it or whatever, if you have a kind of crappy week, it's raining and you're just feeling a little bit bleh, you still know you've got 1,000 people waiting for episode 51. And if you miss it, you've broken that chain. So that's public accountability. Whereas with serializing a novel, you've got more space to move around, because you aren't stuck that suddenly you realize you've written yourself into a corner because you've written all of it. But it lacks that forcing you to hit it. It lacks that potential. Every single chunk is designed to grab the reader's attention, make them think I need to read the next one, because chopping a novel up so each chunk ends on a cliffhanger is surprisingly hard, because novels can have, this is the slow meditative chapter where people regroup. So you have to know why you're doing this. Am I doing this just to get an example of my writing out there? Am I doing this to grab an audience? Am I doing this to fact check? Am I doing this because someone told me I should? Which I think we've all done. And sometimes it's worked out for us and sometimes it hasn't. But if someone tells you serializing your work is a great way to build a platform, you should ask them what they think is coming out of it. Because a lot of writing advice is great for certain writers.
Well, you need to be very careful of success bias. So someone will say, oh, I serialized my book and it was amazing. I got thousands of readers. Yeah, but that's one person, and maybe a lot of people have tried that and one person has been successful.
Yes, and from personal experience, don't equate readers of serialized work that you're putting up for free to purchasers of your book. The sales of the collected volume of the first parts of Seven Stones, it's okay, but it's not a great conversion rate if you take the audience as being everyone who's subscribed to the weekly episodes.
No, I would nearly say that they're diametrically opposed audiences. There are people who are reading in their browser and there are people who are reading on their Kindle are quite different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is the thing I didn't mention, actually, that some people will say you shouldn't serialize anything you want to make money off. But it's a different reading experience. I hate reading on screens, really. I like reading on pages. I like reading on a Kindle. I don't like reading fiction on a computer screen, really. And there are studies by neurologists, psychologists, and so on of this, that show that actually people are prepared to pay a premium for accessible formats. So if you serialize something for free, there is a conversion of people who will read a couple of episodes and go, I like this, but reading it on my screen isn't great. Oh, it's also available as a book. I'll buy the book. So despite knowing that they can read the entire thing for free, they'll buy the book because $2.99, $3.99, whatever you're charging for it, seems like a fair price to them for not having to do it on a computer screen. So they can read it on their Kindle. They can have it whenever they want. They don't have to go to a website to page from episode to episode. They can just stop in the middle of an episode, come back to it 3 hours later. Their Kindle will have remembered where they were. So there is
I mean, a case in point, Christine Catherine Rush's book, I'm reading at the moment, about marketing, is on her blog for free, but I'm reading a $10 book because I want it on my Kindle. I don't want to read on a screen.
Yeah. So
sorry, go ahead.
You can make money from something that you've serialized for free. Potentially, you're not even losing that much money by serializing it for free if you're smart about it. So if you put the entire thing up for free, that's probably going to hit your sales. If you put small chunks up for free, people will buy the whole thing to have it.
The last thing, very brief thing I was going to say about accountability is if you're sharing stuff for accountability, on a recorder on a podcast mentioned a good thing for accountability. What you do is you go and you buy a tin of cat food, and you give yourself a goal, and if you don't eat the don't reach the goal, you have to eat the cat food. So there you go. That doesn't require sharing anything in public. Obviously, you have to stick to it. If you don't reach your goal, you have to eat the cat food. If you then go, well, I'm not going to eat cat food, well, then it doesn't work.
Yeah, there's a certain, I don't know, I could see it might work, but my immediate reaction to it is if you haven't got the discipline to sit down and write 1,000 words because that's what you want to do, are you going to have the discipline to sit down and eat the cat food? Not write the cat food.
Well, it's about, I think her thing is it's about immediate impact. So if something is 10 weeks away, you go, it's 10 weeks away, it's fine. And then 10 weeks pass and you go, oh dear, 10 weeks went by. Whereas if it's 10 weeks away and you have a tin of cat food in front of you and you go, well, that looks disgusting, so I better sit down and write something, or in 10 weeks time I'm going to have to eat it, then maybe it has a different kind of impact.
I can see that. Yeah, that would work.
Anyway, I think we should probably wrap up there. We're closing in on an hour.
Yeah, we've done that one reasonably well, I think.
Anita mentioned it was your mother's sex scene thing.
Oh, my mother judging sex scenes because they're poorly written. Yes. Yes.
You should probably stop having her as a beta reader, your mother.
I don't think I could. My mother owns some of my books in more than one format because it's the kind of thing mothers do.
Yeah.
I'm seriously considering multiple format releases all on the same day, so you can buy the book as opposed to going, oh, you've released it in paperback, I'd better buy a copy to support you. No, you're messing with my marketing data.
Well, it's not all mothers. I mean, at Christmas, I said, I'm coming over. I can buy CreateSpace discounted versions if anyone wants to read a copy. Crickets. No one is interested. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching, and we will see you on the next one.
Bye for now.